Welcome back to JB Reviews. I have the standard output power stroke on my left and the 7.3 gas engine. Surprising enough, this standard output power stroke is probably the most popular engine right now in the Super Duty lineup. And shockingly, I don't see a lot of 7.3s. Like, I ordered one of these back in 2022, never got it unfortunately, but I was really interested to see how it would be living with this engine day to day. But in this video, we're going to see which is the best option for people. Now, obviously, I got to give a special shout out to Larry H. Miller. They do have quite a few trucks available for sale. So if you are in the market, be sure to give them a look up. Let them know you saw the video. Let's get into it. Now, this is obviously the most popular option in this segment because who doesn't want a diesel? Big horsepower, big torque, and with that forced induction, you're going to always get that power you need going up steep grades. And I live out here in Utah now, and because we're so high above elevation, you do lose power every 1,000 feet you go up, so it does suck because of that. So with that being said, 475 horsepower is class leading, only to be bested by Big Brother, which is the high output power stroke. And this engine makes 475 horsepower at 2,600 RPMs. Like, that is insanity. 1,050 pound-feet of torque at 1,600 RPMs. That's why you diesel. But for some people, the diesel is just overrated, especially when you think about the emissions crowd. The 7.3, when it came out back in 2020, I still think to this day, it is one of the best engines on the market. They did do some updates to the intake, for example, and this engine is not direct injection. So that's, to me personally, one of the best things I like about it, because it keeps the intake valves clean so you don't have to worry about deposit buildup. And this engine makes 430 horsepower. Now that does come on around 5,500 RPMs, but it has 485 pound-feet of torque that comes on around 4,000. Now, I've always been told that direct injection engines make more power compared to port fuel injection, but somehow Ford was able to get the power it needed out of this overbuilt gasser. Now, as far as the block goes on the diesel, again, overbuilt. You have compacted graphite iron compared to cast iron, although cast iron is pretty darn strong, but it is heavier when you compare it to that compacted graphite iron. They both have aluminum heads too. And as far as the compression goes, the 7.3 has 10.5 to 1 compression versus the 15.8 to 1 compression on the diesel. But what are some of the drawbacks for the diesel? I've said this many times over. Diesels are not the best for people who do a lot of city driving. Also, if you're not one to tow a lot, well, the DPF can get filled up with soot when you don't put these trucks under load. So I know sometimes people like the idea of a diesel because it makes them feel cool, but diesels aren't what they used to be, and it's something that you really have to consider. Now, I'm going to mention this in the video, but I don't think that this is a big drawback for me. DEF. Now, although I wish I could delete my truck, and trust me, if the government makes it to where it's not illegal, the next truck I get, I'm deleting it and I ain't looking back. But the cost of DEF is not that much unless you do a lot of towing. When you are just cruising around mostly, especially on the highway, you don't use that much DEF. I mean, I would venture to say I've gotten down to, I don't know, probably maybe a gallon or so of DEF. And I want to say it cost me maybe $28 to fill up. Now, with mixed towing and driving, I probably put about 4,000 miles on that tank of DEF. So again, in my opinion, it's not a big cost. Now, obviously, the benefits of a diesel are huge. I mean, I'm going to go over a few of them here. For example, this is one you probably don't think about. You can go longer on the oil changes with a diesel engine. And if you do a lot of towing, that's going to be very beneficial to you, because if you do a lot of towing with that gas engine, you're probably going to change that oil probably every 3,000 to 4,000 miles. And honestly, even if you're not towing that much, I still would probably recommend for a gas truck to change it every 3,000 to 4,000 miles. Like, because of how much oil these engines take, it does make more sense to go a little bit longer. I mean, these engines are overbuilt and diesels run at lower RPM, so you're not really heating that oil up as much as you would be on the gas engine. Now I could be speculating there a little bit, but that's why I think personally diesels go a little bit longer for the oil changes. One, because of the capacity, and number two, because they don't run at higher RPMs like the gas engines. Another benefit is the weight. I've towed with gas trucks and diesel trucks, and one thing I've learned is that extra weight that these diesels give you, it really does turn into better control with your trailer. Now again, I think that if you look at a gas truck, because of how big these Super Duties are, these trucks do tow well, but if you were to tow back to back with a diesel and gas, I'm willing to bet you're going to notice a difference in how the truck performs under load going down the road. Now obviously the gas engine is going to have a lot of drawbacks too. As I've said, you know, you can't go as long on the oil changes. Now granted, the oil changes are going to be a little bit less expensive, but you are doing them a lot more. So if you're driving a lot of miles, that's going to affect you. Something else you're probably not going to consider is the resale value. Although that diesel is $10,000 more, getting a gas truck is not a great idea, because sometimes I believe dealers are afraid of these trucks. So if you put a lot of miles on your pickup, I would recommend you go to a diesel, because a high mileage gas truck is just scary now. I mean, again, I don't agree with that methodology, but that's how people think. They think that getting a gas pickup means no one's gonna want it and is already at the end of its life when it gets close to 100,000 miles, which is far from the truth. Now, fuel costs is always gonna be a little bit cheaper for a gas engine, depending on who's in office. Just kidding. But, I'm not kidding, I'm being dead serious. But, here's something else that you don't have to worry about with a gas truck. No CP4, which is the fuel pump, and this truck does not need fuel filters. So I would venture to say, dollar for dollar, you're gonna save more right out of the gate, because you don't have to spend 10 grand. The 7.3 now comes standard from XLT up. And so when you think about the cost out of the gate, you're saving that on the price and on the financing. So $10,000 finance is a finance charge, right? So you have to consider, is the gas engine not worth it? I really want to change the conversations I get into, or just the online hate of gas, Super Duties, and HDs, because personally, more people should be buying these compared to the diesel, because for the most part, a lot of guys aren't even towing. That's, like, to me personally, the biggest reason why I would get a diesel is because I want to tow a trailer, and the diesel is going to do more for me, especially when you're traveling cross country and you go to fill up. Out west, there's a lot of gas stations that give you a RV area. So if you're not, you know, towing commercially, you know, there's still some places that you can fill up and not have to worry about dragging a big trailer over to, like, where the consumers fill up at, because it can get kind of dicey. But when people say that these engines are not worth it in an HD, that is just absolutely stupid. I've literally towed with these gas engines, and don't get me wrong, without having that forced induction, they do lack the power that a diesel has. But these engines are overbuilt, especially this one. Now let's talk about the rear ends. If you're looking at a Power Stroke diesel, this is gonna have a 331 standard. It's gonna be a non-limited slip diff, or you can upgrade to a 355 with the locker out back. As far as the gas engine goes, whether you get F250 or F350, you can now get the 373 standard. That is a non-limited slip diff, or you can get the 430 gearing out back, which is a locker as well. And one thing I love about that is, for some people, when you live at these higher elevations, that lower gearing might help you in terms of towing capacity going up steep grades. Now let's go ahead and talk about the biggest reason why you would get a gas pickup. I'm going to show you guys the payload for a F350 long bed truck. Now this one right next to me is a standard bed, but this is F250, so it's going to have a 10,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating. This truck still has 3,142 pounds of capacity, and if it did have the 11,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating, it would basically be 4,100 pounds of payload. As far as this diesel goes, 11,200 pound is the gross fuel core rate rating. And you see right there, this truck has a 3,605 pound payload. So again, if these were both 350s, that gas truck would have more payload capacity. And even with this truck having more options and features, it would probably still have more payload capacity. So in the next video that I do, we're gonna drive these trucks. I'm gonna see if that diesel over here is gonna do better for fuel efficiency. Now it's about 50 degrees outside, so we'll see how these trucks do for 0 to 60 on road manners, and we'll figure out from there which one makes more sense. See you guys in the next video. I almost forgot to mention the exhaust brake. So yeah, the diesels do have that benefit. In the past, it never really worked that great in my opinion, but for these newer Super Duties, it works flawlessly. So yeah, that is the advantage that the diesel has too over the gas engine.